links. So links, what that means is basically the connection of one thing to another. In our case, this is going to mean any number of things. So when we say linking on the web, there are a number of things that are linked to our pages. We can have hyperlinks that go from one web page to another, right? So when you have a menu item and you click on it and it opens up a new web page, right? So that's linking to something. You can also have images inside of your web page, such as you see right here, right? This is a picture. This picture doesn't exist in the document, right? So we've been writing an HTML document. It doesn't exist in the document. It's a separate file. So that is also linked to this. If I had a video or audio or other sort of media, some sort of interactive component, that would also be linked. And later on, you'll see when we create, we've been writing some CSS in line, but later on you'll see that you'll create CSS that is linked externally. It's a separate sheet altogether, and that also has to be linked. Now, that being said, there are two main ways of describing your links, okay? And that's using a URL, which stands for, they're both URLs. There's an absolute URL and a relative URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Link. That helps you at all. And basically, an absolute URL means that it tells the browser an exact location. So typically, when you're on the internet, if you type in, if I go up to my browser, I can type in, google.com, and that's going to go to a very specific computer on the internet. It's a specific address, okay? Now, you can also set up absolute links locally on your computer. So you might have a path that will say like your computer name, then maybe like your desktop, then a folder name, and then what have you, right? But it's very specific to your computer. The other type of URL is relative URL. A relative URL is based on the current location of the document, meaning in relationship to where the document is now, this whatever item that I'm trying to link is in the same folder as it, in a folder below it, in a folder above it, so on and so forth. So if it's in the same folder and I'm trying to attach something, I would simply write img, which is image, source, which is how we tell it where the source is, where it's located. And in this case, you can see if it's in the same folder, we just write the name of the file because it's right next to it. So that's what you would do. Now, if it's a folder below, you would have to write image source and then be the folder name / then the file name. If it's a folder above, it's .. / and then the file name. And then if it's two folders below, you have to do the folder, then the next folder, and then the image. Okay. That's basically the idea. And the same thing if you're doing a grandparent, if you're going upwards. Okay. So really kind of a real world example of this would be if you have a neighbor, right? And you don't like that neighbor. All right. So if you ask me, hey, where's that guy you don't like? And I'm at my house, I would say, oh, he's across the street. That's where he is to me. That would be a relative URL. My neighbor is across the street and I hate that guy. Okay. Now, if you were to ask me about somebody that I hate, somebody else that I hated, right? Very specifically, I would tell you like, oh, if they're not my neighbor, I'd have to give you their address. And no matter where you were in the whole world, right, you could go, oh, I can go to such and such address, and that is where the person that I dislike lives. Okay. I could also give you the address if I'm right next door, but that will work no matter where we are. As opposed to if I lived on one street and I hate my neighbor lives across the street, that's who I hate that lives across the street. But let's say I go to another street and I live in somewhere else. The neighbor I hate that's across the street is in a different spot. Okay. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. Most of the time, you're going to want to create relative URLs. When you are writing out your links and stuff, if you notice that the name's like really long, like if it's not just doing just a file name or just one folder in the file name, but it's like many folders and many names, then you probably are not creating relative URLs. Okay, so just be aware of those two things. One uses the location of the document that's writing the URL, and the other one it's regardless of where that document is. That location is just 100% where it always is. Typically, you use absolute URLs for things that are online, and relative for things that are contained within the same folder.